The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in mid-December, sealed in a cream envelope with a child's careful handwriting and a stamp featuring a snowman. Matthew Harcourt, CEO of Harcourt Industries, sat in his corner office on the 47th floor overlooking downtown Boston, where the first snow was beginning to fall against a pewter sky. He opened the letter absently, expecting another charity appeal, another gala invitation, but the words stopped his breath cold. Dear Santa Claus, send me love. My mama cries at night when she thinks I'm sleeping. We have a tree this year, but no lights. She says we're doing fine, but her hands shake when she opens bills. I don't want toys. I just want her to smile again. Please. Love, Sophie. Below it, in a different hand, trembling, embarrassed, crossed out but still legible, was an address. His ex-wife's address. But before we step deeper into this memory, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Like this video so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe to follow the next journeys. 3 years. It had been 3 years since Lily had walked out of their Beacon Hill townhouse, with nothing but 2 suitcases and their 6-year-old daughter. 3 years since she told him she couldn't live in the shadow of his empire anymore. Couldn't raise Sophie in a world where money replaced presents, where business dinners mattered more than bedtime stories. He'd let her go. Too proud to fight, too wounded to beg. He'd signed the divorce papers in silence, given her the settlement she hadn't wanted, and tried to convince himself that the hollow ache in his chest was simply adjustment. Now he held evidence that his absence hadn't healed anyone. The letter had been delivered to his office by mistake, a mix-up in the company's annual charity drive, where employees could adopt letters from local children. Someone in the mailroom must have pulled it from the pile without reading it carefully. Matthew stood at the window, watching snow dust the historic brownstones below, the cobblestone streets already frosting white. Boston at Christmas had always been Lily's favorite time. The lights on the common, the carolers at Faneuil Hall, the smell of roasted chestnuts and fresh pine. They'd met during a snowstorm 7 years ago, when she'd been a graduate student in literature, and he'd been building his tech company from the ground up. She'd been sitting in a North End cafe reading Keats, and he'd asked her what made sad poetry beautiful. She'd looked at him with those amber eyes, warm, thoughtful, unimpressed by his custom suit, and said, because it tells the truth about longing. He'd fallen in love with her honesty, and destroyed their marriage with his absence. Now his daughter was writing to Santa because her mother's hands shook opening bills, because there were no Christmas lights, because Lily cried when she thought no one could hear. The settlement he'd given her had been generous, more than generous, but Lily had a pride that matched his own. She'd probably put it in a trust for Sophie and refused to touch it, working herself to exhaustion to prove she didn't need him. The thought made his jaw tighten. Even in leaving, even in silence, they were still locked in the same stubborn dance. Matthew looked down at the letter again, at his daughter's careful handwriting, at the crossed-out address his ex-wife had written and tried to erase. A mistake, an accident, a crack in Lily's careful armor of independence. He pressed his palm against the cold window glass, his reflection ghostly in the darkening afternoon. Outside, the city was transforming into a winter postcard, but inside his chest, something long frozen was beginning to shift. This wasn't about pride anymore. This wasn't about who had been right or wrong. His daughter was asking Santa for love, and her mother was crying alone in the dark. He picked up his phone, then set it down. Lily wouldn't answer his calls. She never did. She'd built a wall between them as solid as the one he'd built with his silence during their marriage. But Sophie's letter was a door left accidentally open. And Matthew Harcourt hadn't built an empire by ignoring opportunity when it appeared, even when it wore the shape of his deepest regret. The address led him to Dorchester, to a neighborhood he'd never visited during their marriage. Narrow streets lined with triple-deckers, their wooden porches sagging slightly under the weight of years and weather. Christmas lights blinked from some windows. Plastic Santas stood sentinel in small yards, but the building where Lily lived remained dark. Matthew sat in his car across the street as evening fell, watching snow accumulate on the walkway leading to her second-floor apartment. A single window glowed yellow. Kitchen light, he thought. He could see movement behind sheer curtains, a shadow passing back and forth with the rhythm of someone cooking dinner. He'd hired a private investigator once, 6 months after the divorce, then fired him an hour later without reading the report. That had felt too much like surveillance, like control, like all the things she'd accused him of. But now he wished he knew the details of her days, what time Sophie caught the school bus, whether Lily still took her coffee black with 1 sugar, if they'd kept the tradition of reading together before bed. The front door opened and Sophie emerged bundled in a purple coat too thin for December, her dark curls escaping from beneath a knitted hat. Lily followed, locking the door with careful precision, her own coat practical and worn at the cuffs. Even from this distance, even in the dusk and falling snow, Matthew recognized the line of her shoulders, the way she touched Sophie's head with unconscious tenderness, checking that her hat was secure. His daughter laughed at something, her breath puffing white in the cold air, and Lily's face softened into a smile that made Matthew's chest constrict. She was thinner than he remembered, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, but she moved with the same quiet grace that had first caught his attention in that North End cafe. They walked toward the bus stop at the corner, Sophie skipping ahead through the snow, while Lily called gentle warnings to watch for ice. Matthew sank lower in his seat, feeling like an intruder in his own daughter's life. He'd missed 3 years of those skips, those laughs, those small moments that made up the architecture of childhood. He'd written checks, child support that Lily never cashed, birthday gifts sent through lawyers that arrived wrapped by strangers. He'd told himself it was what she wanted, the clean break, the freedom from his suffocating world of board meetings and merger negotiations. But watching them now, watching Lily brush snow from Sophie's shoulders as they waited in the pool of light from the street lamp, Matthew saw the truth he'd been avoiding. The distance between them wasn't just Lily's pride or his wounded ego. It was fear, his fear that he'd never been enough, that the empire he'd built had been compensation for some fundamental lack of warmth. And her fear, perhaps, that she'd never be strong enough to stand beside him without disappearing entirely. The bus arrived, belching exhaust into the winter air. Lily helped Sophie climb the steps, then stood watching until the bus pulled away, her hand raised in a wave that lingered even after the taillights disappeared around the corner. She stood there alone for a long moment, her shoulders rising and falling with a deep breath, before turning back toward the apartment. The smile was gone. Her face looked tired, older than 32, marked by burdens she carried in silence. Matthew waited until she disappeared inside before starting his car. He didn't have a plan, just the letter folded in his breast pocket, and a growing certainty that some mistakes couldn't be unmade, but might still be transformed. He drove through the snowy streets back toward Beacon Hill, but instead of heading to his townhouse, he found himself at the Harcourt Industries warehouse in South Boston. The building was quiet at this hour, but the loading dock was still lit, and the foreman looked surprised to see the CEO walking through at 7 in the evening. Matthew moved through the aisles of inventory, tech equipment ready for shipment, boxes stacked in precise rows. But tucked in the back corner was what he'd come for, the company's donation staging area, where they collected items for their annual charity drives. Christmas lights in unopened packages, space heaters still in their boxes, winter coats in all sizes. "Mr. Harcourt?" The foreman appeared behind him, concerned. "Is there a problem with the inventory?" "No," Matthew said, running his hand along a box of LED light strings, the kind that cast warm, white light instead of the harsh-colored bulbs. "I need these delivered. Tomorrow morning, early." He pulled out his phone, texting his assistant with the address. "And I need it done anonymously. No company labels, no cards, just the delivery." The foreman nodded slowly, understanding something unspoken in his boss's expression. "Consider it done, sir." Matthew left the warehouse feeling both purposeful and uncertain, like a man trying to rebuild a bridge by starting with a single plank thrown across a chasm. He knew what Lily would think if she discovered he was behind it, that he was trying to buy his way back into their lives, that he still didn't understand the difference between providing and being present. But Sophie's letter had asked Santa for love, and love sometimes wore practical clothes. It showed up as warm coats and working lights. It meant a mother's hands didn't have to shake quite so hard when the heating bill arrived. He drove home through streets now thick with snow, past brownstones decorated with wreaths and garland, past families visible through lit windows gathering around dinner tables. His own house stood dark and silent, exactly as he'd left it that morning. Inside, the rooms were immaculate, professionally decorated for the season with a tree that had cost more than Lily probably spent on rent. But no one had hung ornaments with memory attached. No one had strung lights while laughing. No one lived here. Not really. Matthew stood in his living room, still wearing his coat, and looked at the letter one more time. "Dear Santa Claus, send me love." He thought of Lily's face in the streetlight, the way exhaustion and determination had drawn new lines beside her mouth. He thought of how she'd stood watching the bus disappear, alone in the snow, still protecting their daughter from the weight of their broken promises. This wasn't going to be simple. Nothing with Lily had ever been simple. That was part of why he'd loved her, her refusal to accept easy answers or convenient compromises. But for the first time in 3 years, Matthew Harcourt felt something other than the hollow ache of absence. He felt the dangerous stirring of hope, and beneath it, the even more dangerous recognition that he'd never stopped loving his ex-wife, not even for a single day of their careful separation. The delivery truck arrived at Lily's apartment at 6:30 the next morning, early enough that the streets were still quiet, late enough that lights were beginning to glow in kitchen windows. Matthew sat in his car 2 blocks away, drinking coffee that had long since gone cold, watching through the gray pre-dawn light. He'd barely slept, kept awake by questions that circled like winter birds. What if she refused the delivery? What if she somehow traced it back to him? What if this gesture only widened the distance between them instead of closing it? He saw Lily open the door in her bathrobe, saw her confusion shift to something else. Surprise, maybe wariness, as the delivery men began unloading boxes onto her small porch. She said something he couldn't hear, probably asking who sent them, and the driver shrugged, gesturing to his clipboard. Anonymous, just as Matthew had arranged. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold, staring at the growing pile of boxes. Then Sophie appeared beside her, still in pajamas printed with stars, and the little girl's squeal of delight carried even to where Matthew sat hidden. He watched his daughter jump up and down, pointing at the boxes, tugging on Lily's arm with pure Christmas morning excitement. And he watched Lily's face transform, the wariness melting into something softer, more vulnerable. She knelt down beside Sophie, pulling her close, and even from this distance Matthew could see her shoulders shake slightly. She was crying, he realized. Not from sadness this time, but from something more complicated. Relief mixed with confusion, gratitude tangled with suspicion, the overwhelming weight of being seen in your need when you'd worked so hard to hide it. The delivery men finished and drove away. Lily and Sophie stood on the porch surrounded by boxes as the first light of dawn touched the rooftops. Then, slowly, Lily began bringing them inside, Sophie dancing around her with questions he could imagine. Who sent them, Mama? Was it really Santa? Can we open them now? Matthew started his car and drove away before he could see more, before the temptation to reveal himself became too strong. This gift needed to remain anonymous, at least for now. Lily's pride was a living thing, and he'd wounded it too many times during their marriage by solving problems with money instead of presence, by providing things when what she'd needed was him. At the office, he couldn't focus. He sat through a board meeting without hearing a word, his mind full of Lily's face in the dawn light, the way she'd held Sophie close as if anchoring herself to something real. His assistant, Margaret, finally interrupted his 1,000th glance at his phone. "You're expecting an important call?" she asked, her tone knowing. Margaret had been with him since the company's early days. She'd watched his marriage bloom and wither, had fielded Lily's calls when he was too busy to answer, had probably understood the cost of his ambition before he did. "No," Matthew said, then reconsidered. "Maybe. I don't know." Margaret set a file on his desk, but didn't leave. "The charity drive coordinator mentioned you personally arranged a delivery yesterday, outside the normal channels." He looked up at her, defensive instinct rising, then subsiding. "I did." "Good," she said simply. "It's about time." That evening, Matthew found himself driving back to Dorchester without conscious decision, as if his car knew the route his heart had memorized. The apartment building was transformed. Christmas lights now outlined Lily's windows in warm white. A small wreath hung on her door, and through the sheer curtains he could see the shape of a tree, modest but glowing. Sophie's silhouette moved past the window, dancing, and he heard the faint sound of music, holiday songs playing from some inexpensive speaker. He parked and sat watching, feeling both comforted and hollowed out by the scene. This was what he'd wanted for them, warmth and light and joy, but he was on the outside of it, a ghost at the window of his own lost life. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "I don't know who you are, but thank you. You gave my daughter magic today." L. Matthews stared at the message, his heart hammering. Not his number. She must have texted the company's general charity line, not knowing it would be forwarded to him. The fact that she'd reached out at all, that she'd lowered her guard enough to express gratitude to a stranger, told him how deeply the gift had affected her. He typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on. "Every child deserves magic. Every mother deserves to see her daughter smile." The reply came quickly. "Not all mothers have strangers who understand that." He sat with those words, hearing the loneliness beneath them, the isolation of carrying burdens alone. Before he could overthink it, he wrote, "You're not alone, even when it feels that way." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "How did you know what we needed? The lights, the coats, even the space heater. It was like someone saw inside our life." "Because I did," Matthew thought. "Because I sat outside your apartment in the snow and watched you shiver. Because our daughter wrote a letter that broke my heart. Because I've been seeing inside our life for 3 years, just from the wrong side of the glass." But he wrote, "Maybe Santa's helpers pay better attention than we think." A longer pause this time. Then, "I stopped believing in Santa a long time ago, but today my daughter believes again. That's worth more than anything in those boxes." Matthew closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the seat. This conversation felt like touching something fragile through a curtain, present but not present, intimate but protected. He could say things to this stranger that he couldn't say to his ex-wife, could be honest in a way their shared history no longer allowed. "What made you stop believing?" he typed. The answer took so long he thought she'd decided not to respond. Then, "I believed in a lot of things once. Love that didn't need proving. Partnership that didn't require scorekeeping. A man who chose me over his empire. I was young. Each word landed like a stone in still water, creating ripples that spread through everything." She was talking about him, about their marriage, about the ways he'd failed her. But she didn't know she was confessing it to him. The anonymity gave her freedom, and her honesty was devastating. Maybe he didn't know how to choose differently, Matthew wrote carefully. Maybe he was taught that providing was the same as loving. Maybe he spent 3 years realizing how wrong he was. Another long pause. When her response came, it was a single question. Does realizing change anything? Matthew sat in the dark car, watching the lights glow in her window, watching shadows move in the warm space he'd helped create but couldn't enter. Did realizing change anything? That was the question that had haunted him through 1,000 sleepless nights, through every business success that felt hollow, through every holiday spent alone in his immaculate, empty house. Only if he has the courage to do something about it, he finally typed. Only if she's willing to believe he's capable of change. The dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, I have to go. Sophie needs dinner, but thank you again. You've given us more than lights and warmth. You've given us hope. That's the rarest gift of all. The conversation ended, but Matthew sat in the car long after, watching the lights in her window, holding his phone like it contained something precious. He'd spoken to his ex-wife for the first time in 3 years, and she'd told him truths she'd never been able to say to his face. She'd asked him the question that mattered most. Does realizing change anything? He looked down at Sophie's letter, still in his pocket, creased now from being folded and unfolded so many times. Dear Santa Claus, send me love. His daughter had asked for the one thing he'd never learned how to give properly. Not love itself, which he'd felt in abundance, but the daily practice of it, the showing up and being present, the choosing of people over profits and moments over meetings. Matthew started the car and drove slowly through the snowy streets, past houses lit with Christmas cheer, past families visible through windows. But this time the hollow ache in his chest felt different, less like emptiness, and more like a space being cleared for something new. Lily had asked if realizing changed anything. He was about to find out. The coffee shop was called Maven's, tucked into a corner of Jamaica Plain with mismatched furniture and the kind of worn comfort that spoke of regulars and ritual. Matthew had found it by following the clues in Lily's sparse social media. A photo from 8 months ago, tagged with the location, captioned simply, Sunday morning peace. He'd been watching the place for 3 days now, learning its rhythms, and this Sunday morning he finally saw what he'd been waiting for. Lily pushing through the door with Sophie, both of them laughing about something, shaking snow from their coats. His hands trembled slightly as he pretended to read the newspaper. He'd positioned himself at a corner table with a view of the ordering counter, anonymous in jeans and a sweater instead of his usual tailored suit, a baseball cap pulled low. He felt ridiculous, like a spy in his own unfinished story, but he needed to see her in her real life, needed to understand who she'd become in their years apart before he could figure out how to bridge the distance between them. Sophie ordered hot chocolate with extra marshmallows while Lily got coffee. Black with 1 sugar, he noted, some things unchanged. And they settled at a table by the window. Lily pulled out a worn paperback, while Sophie colored in a book decorated with snowflakes and reindeer. The ordinariness of it struck him harder than he'd expected. This was their Sunday ritual, their small pocket of peace in lives he'd been absent from. Lily's face looked different here, softer than in the rushed morning moments he'd glimpsed outside their apartment. She smiled at something Sophie said, reaching across to tuck a curl behind their daughter's ear, and the gesture carried such easy intimacy that Matthew felt the loss of it like a physical blow. He was about to leave. This felt too much like trespassing, when Sophie suddenly stood up, looking toward the bathroom, and Lily nodded permission. The little girl skipped past Matthew's table, close enough that he could have reached out and touched her, and his breath caught. She was so much taller than his memory of her, her face losing its baby roundness, becoming someone distinct and remarkable. She had Lily's eyes but his dark hair, his stubborn chin but her generous mouth. She was proof that they'd once been happy, once been whole. "Excuse me," a voice said. And Matthew looked up to find Lily standing beside his table, holding Sophie's coloring book. "My daughter left this. She's quite attached to it." Their eyes met, and the world seemed to slow and fracture. He saw the exact moment recognition hit her, the way her eyes widened, the coloring book slipping slightly in her grip, the color draining from her face. For 3 heartbeats, they stared at each other, and Matthew saw everything flash across her expression. Shock, confusion, anger, something else that might have been longing before she shuddered it away. "Matthew," she said, his name barely a whisper. "Lily." He stood awkwardly, the newspaper falling to the floor. What are you doing here?" Her voice was quiet but sharp, glancing around to make sure Sophie was still in the bathroom. "Are you following us?" "No. Yes. I mean..." He struggled for words that wouldn't sound insane. "I just wanted to see you. See Sophie." "You have visiting rights. Through lawyers, like we agreed." Her knuckles were white on the coloring book. "This isn't... You can't just show up at our coffee shop, Matthew. This is our place." "I know. I'm sorry." He reached into his pocket, pulled out the letter. "This came to my office, by mistake." Lily's eyes fell to Sophie's careful handwriting, to her own crossed-out address, and her face crumpled for just a second before she composed herself. "You weren't supposed to see that." "I know. The Christmas things. The delivery." Her voice was tight. "That was you." "Yes." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears and fury. "I knew it." God, I knew it felt too personal to be random charity. You had no right, Matthew. No right to spy on us, to learn about our struggles, to swoop in like someone who still cares. The words came out harder than he intended. Like someone who read his daughter asking Santa for love because her mother cries at night. "Don't." Lily's voice broke. "Don't you dare use Sophie's innocence to justify what? Surveillance? Control? This is exactly what I left. This is exactly why we can't..." She stopped, breathing hard, as Sophie emerged from the bathroom. "Mama?" Sophie saw them standing there, saw her mother's distress, and her small face filled with concern. Then she looked at Matthew, really looked at him, and he watched confusion shift to cautious recognition. "Daddy?" The word nearly broke him. He knelt down to her level, his throat tight. "Hi, Sophie Bear. What are you doing here?" Sophie looked between them, trying to understand the tension crackling in the air. Matthew glanced up at Lily, saw her jaw set, saw her fighting tears. "I was having coffee and saw your mom. I wanted to say hello." "Oh." Sophie processed this, then brightened slightly. "Did you see our Christmas lights? Someone sent us the prettiest lights, and Mama cried happy tears, and we have a tree now with ornaments and everything." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." He couldn't look at Lily, couldn't bear to see the accusation in her eyes. "We should go," Lily said, her voice carefully controlled. "Say goodbye to your father, Sophie." "But we just got here. I didn't finish my hot chocolate." "Now, Sophie." There was steel beneath the gentleness, and Sophie heard it. She hugged Matthew quickly, a brief, uncertain embrace that felt both precious and heartbreaking, before Lily took her hand and led her toward the door. Matthew stood frozen, watching them leave, watching Lily's rigid back and Sophie's confused backward glances. Then Lily stopped at the door, her hand on the handle, and turned back. Her face was composed now, but her eyes held something ancient and unresolved. "The answer is no," she said quietly. and he knew she was referencing their text conversation, the question he'd asked about courage and change and belief. Realizing doesn't change anything, Matthew, because you're still doing it. You're still trying to fix things from a distance, still using your resources instead of yourself, still showing up when and how you want without asking what we actually need. What do you need? The question came out raw, desperate. Tell me, please. Lily's laugh was soft and sad. That's the problem. You shouldn't have to ask. You should know. She pushed through the door into the cold morning, and through the window, he watched her bundle Sophie into her thin coat, watched them walk away through the snow, watched her bend down to whisper something that made Sophie nod seriously. Matthew sank back into his chair, his heart hammering. The other patrons had politely pretended not to notice the drama, but he felt their sidelong glances, their curiosity. He'd come here hoping to find a way back, and instead he'd proven exactly what Lily had said. He was still approaching their relationship like a business problem to be solved with strategy and resources. He'd learned nothing at all. His phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number, Lily's he knew now. Don't contact me again. Not as yourself. Not as Santa's helper. Not at all. Sophie doesn't need a father who shows up by accident and leaves by choice. And I don't need a man who thinks love is something you can deliver in boxes. We're doing fine without you. We'll keep doing fine. Matthew read the message 3 times, each word a small blade. Then he typed, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm doing exactly what I always did. But Lily, I'm not showing up by accident. I'm showing up because I can't stay away anymore. Because I read our daughter's letter and realized I've wasted 3 years being too proud and too scared to fight for what matters most. The response came immediately. Then you've wasted 3 more minutes. Because I'm not fighting anymore, Matthew. I'm done. We're done. We've been done. He stared at the words until they blurred. Then he stood, left money on the table, and walked out into the December cold. The snow was falling harder now, covering the streets in white, muffling the city sounds. He stood on the sidewalk where Lily had stood moments before, looking at their footprints leading away, her measured steps, Sophie's smaller prints beside them, occasionally skipping, evidence of lives moving forward without him. But this time, instead of returning to his car, instead of retreating to his empty house and his comfortable loneliness, Matthew followed their footprints through the snow, not close enough to intrude, not stalking them through the streets, but following the path they'd taken as if he could learn something from the trail they left behind. He needed to understand what Lily meant when she said he should just know what they needed. He needed to see his own failures clearly enough to transform them into something else, into presence instead of presence, into showing up instead of sending things, into the daily practice of love instead of its grand gestures. The footprints led him through Jamaica Plain's quiet streets, past row houses decorated for Christmas, past families shoveling sidewalks and children building snowmen. And Matthew walked through it all like a ghost, like someone learning to be human again, like a man trying to find his way home through 3 years of winter. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and crystalline cold. Matthew stood in his Beacon Hill townhouse surrounded by wealth that felt like evidence of a life misspent. The professionally decorated tree mocked him with its perfection. No memory, no love, just expensive emptiness. He'd spent 2 weeks respecting Lily's boundary, not contacting her, not following. But tonight, Christmas Eve, felt impossible to bear alone. At 8 o'clock, unable to stand the silence, he grabbed his coat and drove to Dorchester. Her building glowed with Christmas lights. He knocked before fear could stop him. Lily opened the door in jeans and an oversized sweater, her face flushed from warmth inside. Behind her, Sophie played near the tree in pajamas. The apartment smelled of sugar cookies and pine. Matthew, what are you doing here? I know you said not to contact you, but I need to say something, and I need you to hear it. He stood in the cold. Not through lawyers or texts, just me telling you the truth. The truth? Her laugh was bitter. This is just another grand gesture. I'm in therapy. The words tumbled out raw. 3 times a week since Maven's. Started 6 months before that, actually, after I couldn't sleep and realized I'd destroyed the only thing that ever mattered because I didn't know how to be present. Lily went very still. What? You asked what I need, but you had it backwards. I need to tell you what you needed. He pulled out Sophie's worn letter. You needed me home for dinner every night, not once a month. You needed me to remember Sophie's school play mattered more than board meetings. You needed me to ask about your dissertation instead of assuming you gave it up happily. You needed me to sit with you evenings and talk about poems that tell the truth about longing. Her eyes filled with tears, her hand gripping the doorframe. You needed me to notice when you stopped smiling, to ask why instead of buying jewelry. You needed me to understand partnership meant sharing small moments, not just providing security. You needed me to choose you over my empire in 1,000 tiny ways. His voice broke. And I didn't. I failed you completely. I've spent 3 years learning to be the man you needed, except you weren't there to see it. Why now? Lily whispered. Why tonight? Because our daughter wrote to Santa asking for love, and I realized I've been doing the same. Hoping impossibly that you might still believe I'm capable of change. He stepped back, giving her space. I'm not here with gifts or solutions. I'm here to tell you I see you, Lily. I see you working yourself to exhaustion, crying at night, building a life of dignity alone. You're magnificent, but you're also lonely, carrying everything because you're too proud to ask for help and too hurt to trust anyone would show up. She was crying now, tears streaming. Maybe I haven't changed enough. Maybe 3 years don't undo the damage. He pulled out an envelope. This isn't money, just a letter. Everything I should have said 3 years ago. You don't have to read it ever, but it's yours. Lily took it with shaking hands. I don't want anything from you, Matthew said. I just needed you to know I understand now, that if I could go back, I'd choose you and Sophie over every meeting, every deal, every achievement that meant nothing without you. Sophie appeared behind Lily, rubbing her eyes. Mama! Who Daddy? Did you come for Christmas? The question hung between them. Matthew looked at Lily, asking permission, and after a long moment she stepped back. Come in, it's cold, and it's Christmas Eve. The warmth enveloped him. Small apartment, nothing like their townhouse, but alive. Children's drawings on the refrigerator, books overflowing shelves, soft carols playing, cookies cooling. Sophie grabbed his hand. Look, Daddy, we made ornaments from salt dough. Matthew knelt beside her, examining each one, listening to their stories. As Sophie chattered, he felt Lily watching to see if this was performance or presence. They're perfect, he said. The most beautiful ornaments I've ever seen. Better than the ones at your big house? So much better, because you made them, because they have stories. They sat together eating cookies, while Sophie talked about school and friends and the Christmas pageant. Matthew listened with his whole attention, and gradually Lily softened beside him. When Sophie's eyes drooped, Lily announced bedtime. Santa can't come until you're asleep. Will Daddy be here when I wake up? Lily looked at Matthew. That's up to your father, sweetheart. I'll be here, Matthew promised. If that's okay with your mom. After tucking Sophie in, Lily sat on the couch and opened his letter. Matthew watched emotions flow across her face. Pain, recognition, tears, something that might have been forgiveness, "You really see it," she finally said. "Everything I needed. I see it now. I'm sorry it took losing you to learn how. Matthew, I want to believe you've changed, but I'm so tired of hoping. Hope is exhausting when it keeps getting disappointed." "Then don't hope," Matthew said. "Just let me show you." With presence, every day, showing up, being here. And if you can't, if the pattern pulls you back, then you'll know I tried. And Sophie will know her father fought for her instead of just sending checks. He reached across the space between them. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm asking you to let me try to earn my way back." Lily looked at his outstretched hand, at the gap representing 3 years of hurt. Then slowly, she reached out and took it. "One day at a time," she whispered. "No promises, just presence." "One day at a time," Matthew echoed, "starting with tonight." They sat together in the glow of Christmas lights, holding hands. Outside, snow covered old tracks, making the world new. And inside, 2 people who had loved and lost began the fragile work of finding their way back, not through grand gestures, but through the simple, revolutionary act of presence. Christmas morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through frost-painted windows, casting crystalline patterns across the small living room. Matthew woke on Lily's couch, disoriented for a moment, then remembered. The conversation, the held hands, the permission to stay. He'd slept in his clothes, covered by a quilt that smelled faintly of lavender, and the apartment was silent, except for the soft hum of the heating system working overtime against the December cold. He sat up carefully, folding the quilt, trying not to disturb the peace of the early morning. Through the bedroom door, left slightly ajar, he could hear Sophie's soft breathing, still deep in sleep. But the kitchen light was on, and he found Lily there, standing by the window in her robe, holding a mug of coffee and staring out at the snow-covered street. "You're up early," he said quietly. She turned, and in the morning light he could see the exhaustion in her face, the evidence of a sleepless night. "I couldn't stop thinking. About everything you said. About the letter." She gestured to it, sitting on the counter, creased from being read multiple times. "About whether I'm making a mistake letting you back in, even a little." Matthew moved to the coffee maker, pouring himself a cup, giving her space to continue. "When I left 3 years ago," Lily said, her voice steady but soft, "I felt like I was drowning, like I'd become invisible in my own life. You'd look at me and see someone provided for, someone secure, someone who should be grateful. But you didn't see me struggling with a dissertation I'd abandoned because there was never time, never support. You didn't see me raising Sophie essentially alone while you traveled constantly. You didn't see me becoming smaller and smaller, trying to fit into the shape of the wife you seemed to need instead of the person I actually was." "I know," Matthew said. "I read your journal, after you left." Lily's head snapped toward him, shock and violation flashing across her face. "I know I shouldn't have," he continued quickly. "It was wrong, an invasion. But I was desperate to understand what I'd missed, what I'd been too blind to see. And reading your words, how you felt invisible, how you cried in the bathroom during parties, how you wondered if I'd even notice if you just disappeared one day." His voice broke. "It destroyed me, Lily. Every page was evidence of how completely I'd failed you." She was silent for a long moment, processing this confession. "You had no right. You're right. I had no right. Just like I had no right to show up at your coffee shop or send anonymous gifts or knock on your door last night." He set down his mug, meeting her eyes directly. "I've spent our entire relationship, marriage and divorce, taking what I wanted, doing what I thought was right, without asking, without listening. Even now, standing here, I'm probably doing it again. So why are you here, Matthew? Really? Lily's question wasn't angry, just tired. What do you want from this? From me? I want to be Sophie's father. Not the man who sends checks and birthday presents through lawyers, but the one who knows her friends' names and helps with homework and shows up to school plays. He paused, gathering courage. And I want the chance to prove I can be the partner you needed, not by grand gestures or throwing money at problems, but by showing up every day, by listening, by choosing you over everything else, consistently, until you believe it's real. That's a pretty speech, Lily said, but her tone was softer now. But speeches are easy, Matthew. It's the daily practice that's hard. It's coming home tired from work and still engaging with a 6-year-old's endless questions. It's doing dishes and laundry and grocery shopping. It's being present even when it's boring, even when there's a crisis at the office, even when being CEO feels more important. I know. That's why I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to test me. Matthew moved closer, careful not to crowd her. Let me be part of Sophie's life. Real custody, not visiting rights. Let me show up for school meetings and doctor's appointments and ordinary Tuesdays. Let me prove I can do the boring daily work of being a father. And us? Lily's voice was barely a whisper. What about us? We take it slow as you need. I don't move back in. I don't push. I don't assume anything. I earn my way back into your trust, if that's even possible, by being consistent, by being the man I should have been all along. Before Lily could respond, Sophie's voice called from the bedroom. Mama! Daddy! Santa came! The spell broke. They looked at each other, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of possibility. Then they moved together toward Sophie's room, where their daughter sat up in bed, eyes wide with Christmas morning magic. The next hours passed in a blur of wrapping paper and excited squeals, of Sophie discovering the modest gifts Lily had carefully chosen, books and art supplies and a small keyboard she'd been saving for. Matthew had brought nothing, had arrived empty-handed for the first time in his life, and somehow that felt right. He wasn't here to buy his way back. He was here to be present. They made pancakes together. The three of them crowded in the tiny kitchen, Matthew following Lily's directions, Sophie standing on a chair to help stir. It was chaotic and imperfect. Batter splattered on the counter, pancakes burned on one side. But it was real. This was what Lily had meant when she said he should just know what they needed. They needed this. Messy, ordinary, present love. After breakfast, as Sophie played with her new keyboard, Lily pulled Matthew aside. I talked to my lawyer yesterday, before you showed up. His heart sank. About what? About modifying our custody agreement. I'd been thinking about it for weeks, actually, since the anonymous Christmas delivery. She looked at him carefully. Sophie needs her father, not just financially, but really needs you. And I realized I'd been so focused on protecting her from disappointment that I'd been depriving her of the chance to have you in her life. Lily. But, she continued firmly, this only works if you're consistent. If you show up when you say you will, every single time. If you make her a priority over your work. Sophie's had enough broken promises in her short life. I won't let you add more. I understand. I'll be there. Whatever schedule we set, I'll be there. Twice a week for dinner, every other weekend. Split holidays. Lily's voice was businesslike, but her eyes were vulnerable. We'll start there. And if you're consistent, if you prove you can do this, we'll expand it. Thank you, Matthew said, and meant it with everything in him. Don't thank me yet. This is the easy part. The hard part is showing up on Tuesday night when you're exhausted, when there's a crisis at work, when being here feels less important than whatever fire needs putting out at the office. I know, but I'll be here. Sophie ran over, grabbing both their hands. Can Daddy help build my Lego set? Please, Mama? Lily looked at Matthew, a test in her eyes. He knew his phone had been buzzing in his pocket all morning. Christmas Day, but his company never truly stopped. The old Matthew would have checked it, would have stepped away to handle whatever crisis couldn't wait. But he pulled his phone out, turned it completely off, and set it on the counter. I'd love to, he told Sophie. Show me what we're building. As he sat on the floor with his daughter, following her enthusiastic directions, he felt Lily watching. This was the test. Choosing presence over urgency. Choosing people over profit. Choosing this moment over everything else demanding his attention. It felt strange and uncomfortable, like learning to breathe in a new way. But it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right in 3 years. Later, as afternoon light slanted through the windows and Sophie dozed on the couch after too much excitement, Matthew prepared to leave. Lily walked him to the door, and they stood in the small entryway, the air between them charged with unspoken things. Tuesday, Lily said. 5:30. Don't be late. I won't be. He paused, then asked the question that had been burning in him all day. Do you think you could ever forgive me? Ever trust me again? Lily was quiet for a long moment, her hand on the doorknob. I don't know, she finally said, and her honesty was both painful and precious. But I'm willing to find out. For Sophie. And maybe, she met his eyes, maybe for us too. If you really have changed. If this isn't just another phase that fades when the novelty wears off. It's not a phase. It's a complete reconstruction of my priorities, of who I am. Then prove it, Lily said softly. Not with words, with presence, with consistency, with showing up over and over until I believe it's real. Matthew nodded, pulling on his coat. At the door, he turned back. Merry Christmas, Lily. Merry Christmas, Matthew. And in her eyes, beneath the caution and the hurt, he saw something that gave him hope. She wanted to believe him. She wanted this to work. She was just too afraid to say it out loud. He drove home through quiet streets, past houses full of families, and for the first time in 3 years, the hollow ache in his chest felt different. Not filled exactly, but filling. Slowly. Carefully. One present moment at a time. Spring came to Boston with tentative warmth, melting the last stubborn patches of snow and coaxing crocuses from the earth in Lily's small community garden plot. Matthew knelt beside Sophie in the dirt, helping her plant tomato seedlings, while Lily worked a few feet away, her hands sure and gentle as she tucked basil plants into soil. 4 months had passed since Christmas Eve. 4 months of Tuesday dinners and weekend custody, of school pickups and homework help, of showing up consistently even when board meetings ran late and crises demanded his attention. It hadn't been easy. There had been moments when his old patterns pulled at him, when the urgency of work felt more compelling than the quiet dailiness of parenting. But each time, he'd remembered Lily's words. Prove it with presence. So he'd left meetings early, delegated more, restructured his entire life around the architecture of his daughter's needs. And slowly, cautiously, Lily had begun to soften. Daddy, you're putting it in crooked, Sophie said, examining his planting technique with serious 8-year-old authority. Am I? Show me how to do it right. She demonstrated with exaggerated patience, and Matthew caught Lily hiding a smile behind her hand. These small moments, Sophie's confidence, Lily's unguarded joy, felt like treasure accumulated slowly, proof that presence compounded over time into something real. After they finished planting, they packed up the gardening tools, while Sophie ran ahead toward the playground at the edge of the community garden. Matthew and Lily walked slowly, maintaining the careful distance that had characterized these 4 months. Close, but not touching. Intimate, but cautious. I got the position, Lily said suddenly, her voice carrying barely suppressed excitement. At Boston University, teaching modern literature. Matthew stopped walking, joy flooding through him. Lily, that's incredible. When do you start? Fall semester. It's just adjunct, but it's a foot in the door. I can finally finish my dissertation, build toward something permanent. Her eyes shone. I'd given up on it, you know. Thought that part of my life was over. But these past months, having consistent help with Sophie, having time to write again, she looked at him. You showing up has given me space to remember who I was before I disappeared into being just a mother. You were never just a mother. You were always extraordinary. I just failed to see it. Failed to support it. They reached a bench near the playground, where they could watch Sophie on the swings, and sat with spring sunshine warming their faces. Lily was quiet for a moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. I've been documenting something, she said, opening it to reveal pages of handwritten notes. Every time you showed up, every Tuesday dinner, every weekend, every school event, the time you left your board meeting when Sophie had a fever, the time you sat up until midnight helping her with her science project, the time you reorganized your entire European trip so you wouldn't miss her spring concert. Matthew looked at the meticulous records, each entry dated and detailed. You've been keeping track. I had to. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I needed to see it myself, to prove that it wasn't temporary, wasn't performance. She met his eyes. 16 weeks, Matthew. 64 dinners. 32 weekends. You haven't missed a single one. You've been exactly where you said you'd be. Exactly when you promised. Every single time. That's what you deserved all along. I know that now. But more importantly, you know it now. Lily closed the folder carefully. I think I'm ready to stop documenting, to start trusting instead of testing. The words hung between them, weighted with significance. Matthew felt his heart hammering. What does that mean? It means I want to try again. Not jump back into marriage, not move too fast, but actually try. Dating, maybe. Seeing if we can build something new from what we've learned. She turned to face him fully. I've been so focused on protecting myself from being hurt again that I almost missed the fact that you really have changed. You're not the same man I left 3 years ago. I'm not. That man thought providing was enough. Thought his empire mattered more than presence. Thought love could be expressed through distance and gifts instead of daily showing up. Matthew reached across the space between them, taking her hand, the first time he'd initiated contact since Christmas. This man knows that you and Sophie are the only empire that matters. That every Tuesday dinner is worth more than every board meeting. That love is spelled Time. Lily's fingers intertwined with his, and the gesture felt monumental. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared of hoping again. Scared of being disappointed. I'm scared too. Scared I'll slip back into old patterns. Scared I'll let you down despite my best intentions. He squeezed her hand gently. But maybe we can be scared together. Maybe that's what partnership actually means. Not having all the answers, but showing up anyway. Sophie ran over, breathless and grass-stained. Mama, Daddy, did you see how high I went on the swings? I almost touched the sky. Then she noticed their joined hands and stopped, her eyes widening. Are you holding hands? We are, Lily said, glancing at Matthew with a question in her eyes. Is this okay to acknowledge? He nodded, then looked at Sophie. Your mom and I are going to spend more time together. See if we can be friends again. Maybe more than friends eventually. How would you feel about that? Sophie's face split into a grin that could have powered the entire city. Does that mean you might come home? Like, really home? Not yet, Sophie Bear. Matthew said carefully. "We're taking it slow, but it means I'll be around more. It means your mom and I are going to try to build something new together, something better than what we had before." "Because you learned," Sophie said with the wisdom of children who see more than adults give them credit for. "You learned how to show up." "Yes," Matthew said, his throat tight. "I learned how to show up." That evening, after dropping Sophie at a friend's house for a sleepover, Matthew and Lily found themselves alone together for the first time in 3 years. They drove to the North End, to the cafe where they'd first met, where 7 years ago he'd asked her what made sad poetry beautiful. The cafe was unchanged. Same mismatched furniture, same worn comfort, same smell of coffee and pastries. They ordered drinks and sat by the window, watching the spring evening deepen into twilight over the historic streets. "Do you remember what you told me?" Matthew asked. "That day I asked about sad poetry?" "I said it tells the truth about longing." Lily smiled at the memory. "You looked at me like I'd said something profound, but I was just a graduate student trying to sound smart. You were profound. You still are. You saw something I couldn't see then. That truth and longing are connected. That beauty comes from acknowledging what we want but don't have." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've spent 3 years longing for you, and I'm done pretending I don't. I love you, Lily. I never stopped. I just forgot how to show it in ways that mattered." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I love you too. That's why it hurt so much when you weren't present. That's why I had to leave. Not because I stopped loving you, but because staying was killing something essential in me. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all the ways I failed you. I know you are, and I forgive you." She reached across the table, taking both his hands now. "Not because the hurt is gone. Some of it will always be there, scar tissue from what we survived. But because I see who you've become. Because you've proven that change is possible. Because our story doesn't have to be defined by where we failed, but by what we learned from failing." They sat like that, as night fell completely, holding hands across the table. Two people who had loved and lost, and found each other again through the hard work of transformation. Outside, the North End came alive with evening energy. Couples walking hand in hand, families finishing dinner, the ancient streets witnessing another chapter in the endless story of human connection. Later, walking through the warm spring night, they found themselves at the Boston Common where fairy lights still glowed in the trees from some earlier celebration. The park was nearly empty, peaceful in a way that invited honesty. "I want to do this right," Matthew said, stopping beneath an old oak tree. "I want to court you properly, take you on dates, write you letters, learn who you've become in these 3 years apart. I want to earn not just your forgiveness but your heart, all over again." "You already have my heart," Lily said softly. "You've always had it. The question was never whether I loved you. It was whether we could build a life together that honored both our needs, both our dreams. Then let me prove we can. Give me a year. Let me show you that I can be consistent, not just as a father, but as a partner. That I can support your career and celebrate your achievements and be present for the boring, beautiful dailiness of life together." "A year," Lily repeated, considering. "And then what?" "And then I ask you to marry me again, properly this time. Not a rushed courthouse wedding, but something that honors what we've survived and what we've become." Lily laughed, the sound pure and joyful. "You're planning a proposal a year in advance?" "I'm planning a life, Lily, with you, with Sophie, with whatever comes next." He pulled her closer, and she came willingly, resting her head against his chest. "I'm done being the man who lets the most important things slip away, because he's too busy building empires that mean nothing. You're my empire, You and Sophie. Everything else is just details. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms beneath the spring stars, while around them Boston breathed and lived and continued its ancient rhythm. Two people who had broken and healed, who had lost and found, who had learned the hard way that love wasn't something you felt, but something you practiced, daily, in 1,000 small choices that added up to a life. When Sophie's letter had arrived on Matthew's desk last December, asking Santa for love, neither of them could have imagined this ending, or rather, this beginning. But standing here now, holding his ex-wife who was becoming his future wife, Matthew understood that Santa hadn't sent love. Love had been there all along, buried beneath pride and hurt and misunderstanding. What Santa had sent, what Sophie's innocent plea had delivered, was a second chance. And this time, Matthew Harcourt wasn't going to waste it. If this story touched you, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for the next journey.